Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sathology Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means a study of science, Sathology means a science of truth, a study of truth. It's the true antonym of mythology, which means a science of fake, lie, or an imagination, or study of fake, lie, or imagination. While the Christian world hates the word mythology, all the Abrahamic institutions hate the word mythology, but they freely use that word against Hindu culture freely in academics. Why? I have no idea. It's like there is a saying that one who steals thinks everyone else is stealing. There is a very common mentality, human mentality. And it was very shocking, like yesterday in one of the talks when I said the mythology word against Abrahamic faith, they said, no, it cannot be mythology. There was opposition over there. And I'm quoting it. And you all know whom I'm talking about. And when I use that for Hindu, they say, okay, it's valid. But it's a reverse true. Everything in the Hindu history, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and has been historically proven. In fact, I have personally also written books on that to prove it. And so, what is mythology? I can definitely say that the Western academics have created mythological histories to create their identity. And they're selling it on the basis of the wealth they have earned after World War II. Before that, they did not have those resources. But as far as Indian history is going, even the Western people, Western academics have proved it is a real history. But some wrong narrations have been told. Now, one thing they have not acknowledged that how many inventions and how many scientific discoveries that they have stolen from the followers of Sanatan Dharma, but did not give credit. You know, if you use somebody else's information without giving credit, it's all plagiarization. And it continues if you try to build on those information. So is it a time of reparation? I do not know. But we have a very, very special guest. He has given some wonderful knowledge to us on these topics. So without delay, let us welcome Sri Prashant Pol. It is so remarkable, isn't it, Prashantji, that everything has been taken from us, but no credit has been given. And that's exactly the
Absolutely.
topic we are going to cover today. So why do you think this mindset is there? What are they? What is that mindset?
No, I think basic theory or basic thinking behind this is they do not rate uh, the Indians as that Indians have some knowledge, a treasure of knowledge, and we are getting that means that Europeans are getting the knowledge from India that they don't believe, they don't like, and hence the credit is not given to Indians. But there are some very solid, strong example wherein they have to acknowledge that yes, this knowledge is basically taken from uh, Indians. For example, on 13th August 2007, that's around 14 years back, University of Manchester in UK had put on their website that they've said that the the infinite series, which which is the basic compound or component of calculus, was invented, discovered by Indians from Kerala. That's what they have said. And that too also only 250 years before the Isaac Newton has discovered this, as we all are aware. And we are aware means we all are learned from our schools. I learned from my school that it was Isaac Newton who had discovered that law of gravity and so many other things. But that's not a fact. Uh, Dr. George Georgis Joseph is from the University of Manchester. He has written a book. The book name is The Crest of the Peacock, the non-European roots of mathematics. Therein he has to mention, or he had mentioned, that the knowledge of gravity or knowledge of basic components of the calculus was not came to the world from Sir Isaac Newton. Rather, it was from the Indians, the great Indians. But he had given the credit to only 250 years before Sir Isaac Newton had mentioned this. However, if we go into the history, we find that Indians knew this much, much earlier. Much earlier. For example, there is a Vaisheshik Sutra. Vaisheshik Sutra is basically written by sage Kanad. Kanad is also known for the his invention of the atoms. So sage Kanad has written this Vaisheshik Sutra. Therein, he had mentioned. I mean, this book is basically 6th to 2nd century before the Christ. Not exactly, the date is not exactly known, but around, we can say very safely that around more than 2200 to 2600 years old. Therein he has used the word Gurutva, and he has mentioned that Gurutva is the force which arises due to mass, and very specifically mentioned that the Gurutva exists on the earth. But then later on, but much earlier than Sir Isaac Newton, there was a book called Siddhanta Kaumudi. In Siddhanta Kaumudi was written by Bhaskara, the Bhaskara II. He has written, and I quote one shloka from his book, Akrushti Shaktischa Mahitathayat Khastham Guru Swabhimukham Swashaktya Akrushe Tatpativa Bhati Same Samantat Patatviyam Khe. Meaning of this Sanskrit shloka is the attracting, that is the gravitational force, is the earth. The earth, with that gravitational force of hers, attracts towards herself the large objects in the sky. It seems as though she is falling in space with matching forces. Where will she, that is earth, fall? So clear, there is no ambiguity. Very clearly is mentioned that the earth has the gravitational force. And this was mentioned in the Siddhanta Kaumudi written by Bhaskara II, that was in the 1150, in the year 1150. It was in the Bhuvan Kosh, chapter 6th. This is there. Now, in spite of that, after 500 years, Isaac Newton came out and said that yes, the gravitational force, because he found that one fruit was falling and that apple was falling, and then the gravitational force is there. So therefore, when Dr. George Georges Joseph wrote a book, he has mentioned that the discovery of gravitational force was wrongly attributed to Sir Isaac Newton and Gottfried Leibniz. So this was wrong. And unfortunately, since so many years, we all were learning in our schools that it was the Newton who discovered the law of gravity. So this is something really shocking, that the due credit was not given to the Indians, the Hindu culture, the Hindu knowledge, wherein it was very clearly spelled out without any ambiguity. And this Siddhanta Kaumudi, which was written, as I said, that it was in 1150, and Newton's time was, Newton was born in 1642 and he died on 1727, 500 years after that. And Dr. Verghese has, Dr. George Joseph has written in his book that probably Newton might have got this knowledge from the Christian missionaries in the 15th century who were there in Kerala, because in Kerala a lot of books were there who used to mention this kind of knowledge. And then from there, from those Christian missionaries, it must have come to Europe, that's Portugal or England, and afterwards probably Newton might have got that knowledge. That's what he has said. But whether he has got knowledge from India or not, the due credit of invention of this law of gravity must be given to Indians. And that is not the only example. There are so many. For example, Pythagoras theorem. Now, from my school days, and my son, my daughter, they all were taught that Pythagoras theorem and how the Pythagoras theorem is basically explained and all. Pythagoras was quite old one, Greek philosopher, scientist, and all. 570 before Christ to 495 before Christ, that was his era. But prior to that, there were a lot of Shalva Sutras available in Indian context. Indians were very strongly, or Hindus were strongly believing in Yajna. Yajna means to basically pray the god of fire, and with some, putting that something on that fire, and then create some atmosphere, environment. That was basically the meaning of Yajna. So for Yajna, there was very specific Yajna used to be there. And for that, how the Yajna Kunda, the pot on which they perform the Yajna, how that Yajna Kunda has to be constructed. For that, for construction of the Yajna Kunda, Bodhayan and his contemporary sages, saints, have written a lot of sutra, which today we call it as a trigonometrical theorems. One of them was this Pythagoras theorem, which was claimed by, or rather said that it was from the Pythagoras. Now, what was written? Again, I say it is very clearly spelled out. There is no ambiguity. The Bodhayan theorem, the sage Bodhayan, written in the Shalva Sutra, chapter 1, shloka 12, and it says that Dirgha Chatura Shasyakshanaya Parshvamani Tiryakamani cha Yat Pratkabhute Kurutasta Dubhayam Karoti. Now, what is the meaning? Meaning of the Sanskrit shloka is the areas of the squares produced separately by the length and breadth of a rectangular together equal the area, that's area of the square, produced by the diagonal. Now, where is the ambiguity? I mean, what is the difference between this Bodhayan theorem and the Pythagoras theorem? But this Bodhayan was 800 years before the Christ. I mean, minimum 300 years before Pythagoras could write this kind of theorem. And it is there. It is very well spelled out. It's not only once, twice. It is basically there. And therefore, the due credit to this has to be given to the Hindu knowledge base. And for that, as I said, that we all must have to write on that, think on that, yes, why that due credit should not be given to Indians, the Hindus. It has to be given to them. That's what my submission on some of the examples. Yeah.
So one of the points which is comes to the mind. See, the philosophy of the Western world is the duck which quacks the loudest gets the cracker, and the philosophy is, if you want to get credit, you need to ask for it. There has, ever since independence, there is not a single forum where Indian government has asked these credits. And Indian politicians have quoted, like Sushma Swaraj was very open, that she quoted in front of everyone that we have given you so much, at least acknowledge. She was the only foreign minister of India which asked. But that's not how you ask. You have to send a letter from the Ministry of Education to these universities recognizing it. That's become official. Until you can give a speech and you can give a talk, it can impress your audience, it can go on record somewhere else, somebody may quote, but there has been no official request by India anywhere.
Yeah. So you're right. But as I said, that there are multiple examples of this. There's not only one Pythagoras theorem, not only one this gravity, law of gravity and all. Let's take the example of pi. Pi is very old kind of concept. But who has invented or found out the exact value of pi? Now we say that Archimedes was again a very old kind of scientist, but the exact value of pi, if we have to find out, then Aryabhatta in Aryabhattiyam has mentioned this in Aryabhattiyam Ganitapada, chapter 2, shloka 10. Aryabhatta was in 499 AD. He has written this Aryabhattiyam, wherein he mentions that when 100 plus 4, that value is multiplied by 8 and added to 62,000, it gives an approximate value for the circumference of a circle whose diameter is 20,000. Now, therein, though he says approximately, much precise, not exactly precise, but much precise value can come out from this kind of formula. But much later to that, the exact value of pi up to 32 digits was found by Venkatesh Ashtottara Shatanamavali. This is basically various names of Lord Vishnu. In that Shatanamavali, the pi value was encrypted. And that's again another treasure of Indian knowledge, wherein this kind of encryption is there within the shloka. And that encryption methodology was called Katapayadi Sankhya. Katapayadi Sankhya is a methodology by which, on given the alphabets, one can correlate that with the numericals, and from that a value could be derived. So, in this Venkatesh Ashtottara Shata Namavali, which was around 1200 years back, this was written. Therein, a shlok is there. The shlok is Gopi Bhagya Madhuvrata Shrungi Shodadi Sandhiga Khala Jivita Khatava Galahalar Sandhara. Meaning of this is, basically, it is in the praise of Lord Krishna. And there was a quite famous picture or quite famous incident of Lord Krishna, that some gopikas were, were there, and they're near a pond, and Krishna is in the center, and all gopikas were circling to Lord Krishna. And considering that incident, this shloka says, "O Krishna, the fortune of gopis, the destroyer of the demon Madhu, Madhu Kaitava, in that Madhu, protector of cattle, the one who ventured the ocean depth, the destroyer of the evildoers, one with plow on the shoulders, and the bearer of nectar, may you protect us." Very simple shloka. It's in the praise of Lord Krishna, but therein, using the Katapayadi methodology, the exact value of pi, again I say, up to 31 digits, and that is in today's, with all advanced methodologies, all advanced knowledge mechanisms, the exact value of pi one can find from the shloka, which is encrypted there, up to 31 digit, which is quite surprising. So we had this kind of knowledge on which a lot of construction, a lot of mechanical things, and a lot of things we have done in those days. Now let's take the example of another example of speed of light. Since from the childhood, we all were learned that the Danish astronomer Ole Romer has discovered the speed of light. And as I said, that the generations together were studied this. But very shocking that much prior to that, there are a lot of information which clearly defines that the speed of light. So when all the sophisticated instrument measurement mechanisms were not available, how the Hindu people, the Indians, could find out the speed of light? It was really surprising. If I can quote Rigveda, Rigveda is a very old book, we all are aware, probably one of the oldest book in the world. That Rigveda in Rigveda Samhita, Mandal 1st, Sukta 50, Mantra 4. Rigveda is more than 8,000 years old book from now. Therein, it mentions Taranir Vishwa Darshato Jyotish Krudasi Surya Vishwama Bhasi Rochanam. Now, let's understand. From 8,000 years before, Indians were aware that sun was a source of light. O sun, you overwhelm all in speed, visible to all, source of light. You shine, pervading the universe. So this was known to us. And when it comes to speed of light, as I said, there were many other people who have also defined on that. But let's take an example of Sayanacharya. Sayanacharya, sage Sayanacharya, was during the Vijayanagara Empire. That was his, Sayanacharya's period was 14th century. From 1315, year 1315, he was born, to 1387 when he died. That was his period. Therein, he wrote a lot of books. He did a lot of bhashya. Bhashya is basically, we can call it as a commentary, as an analysis, adding something like that. See, the Hindu knowledge stream, Indian knowledge stream, was not a kind of one invented and that's all. No, it was not like that. It was a kind of a flow of knowledge. The people used to add into it. People used to analyze the whatever it was said, and whatever is correct, not correct, and all that discussion used to be there, and that's why it was called bhashya. So the Sayanacharya has written a bhashya on Rigveda. Therein, on this whatever shloka we have just heard, on the shloka, Sayanacharya wrote a bhashya. Means he had elaborated this shloka in a much better and much larger prospect. Therein, he writes, Tathacha smaryata, yojananam sahasram dve shate dvecha yojane ekena nimishardhena kramamana namostute. This was, as I said, Sayanacharya, written in his bhashya on Rigveda in 14th century. Much before then, the Danish astronomer Ole Romer. Ole Romer has, given the speed of light in the year 1676. And this was much before that. So what is the meaning of this? Yathacha smaryata yojananam sahasram dvedveshate dvecha yojane. The meaning is, it is remembered that salutations to thee, that is the sun, the traveler of 2202, dvedveshate dvecha yojane. Yojane was a measure. In half a nimisha. Nimisha means the time when we, close our eyes and open. Nimisha, or eyelids going up and down like that. That is called a nimisha, time required for that. I do not do all the calculation. I can come to only the conclusion that what is the yojana. Yojana means how many miles and all. But through the shloka, if we calculate, we find that speed of light is 185,016 185,169 miles per second. I repeat, 185,016.169 miles per second. And today's all sophisticated equipments, when we measure, the modern value is 186,282.397 miles per second. A very small difference is there. Now, point is, first of all, how or from where the Indians have got that knowledge to measure the speed of light, and it is so accurate, very close to that accuracy is there. So, even if we take the reference from Sayanacharya, why can't we say that Sayanacharya has invented and come out the actual value of speed of light? It was not Ole Romer. And Ole Romer also didn't come to the today's exact value. Ole Romer also had some deviation in the value of the light. So that's again my point is that there are so many things wherein the credit was not given to Indians. It was all portrayed that only the Europeans have discovered so many such things. I so I think that is wrong. There are a lot of solid proofs are there by which we can say that yes. And it again, I say again and again, I'm repeating, there is no ambiguity that we are trying to put that some kind of meaning that no, this is mean. No, it's not like that. Anyone who understands Sanskrit can very clearly understand what is the meaning of it. It's as simple as that. And still, Indians were deprived of the due credit which was supposed to be given to them. And that is, I believe that is not correct. That is wrong. That's what I mean to say, that the due credit was supposed to be given to the Indians.
Prashantji, it is a story of again. See, the most of the Indians have not understood the colonial imposition on India. They have not understood. They're living with it. They're living inside it. And people like you, researchers like you, we are bringing out that information. Indians do not know what to ask back. Usually Indian government goes and says, okay, give me this missile system, give me this plane, give me that plane. It is a surprising thing for the Western people also. They're very happy. Their colonization is still continuing in India. They have still colonized their mindset. When India has built all these basic sciences, why were they not able to build, in Sanskrit it's called Shilpikar. Shilpikar doesn't mean Murtiwala. Shilpikar means engineer, Abhyanta.
Engineer. Yes.
And so Indians have not used their knowledge to create their own products and based on these sciences that were available to them. And if you look at the Indian textbooks also, what we are debunking right now, it is mentioned in the Indian textbooks. Every single child in India grows up with this information that everything has come from the West. So naturally, they'll think the West is great. Now, for the West, India is great because I'll tell you, from the point of view of sales, the entire Western model is built on sales. They're selling, earlier they were selling arms to India, and nowadays they sold social media to India. And they're selling ideas like democracy, freedom of speech. Now, freedom of speech always existed in India, in the Vedic culture. In the Hindu cultures, freedom of speech always existed. Vada, Vivad, and also the discussion, all these things were a common norm. Now, if you go to the Western university, you cannot interrupt your professor. Ask any child. If you interrupt your professor twice, the third time he's going to kick you out of the class, whether you have paid the fees or not paid the fees. So it's a culture which is built on the Vatican's imposition of Christianity on their own people. Nobody was Christian before 1600s. After 1400s, before that nobody was. It was still a struggle going on and went on until 17th century. So the science was practically not taught, and the word secularism was invented to separate the church, not the religions, church, from the government and the academic institution, because most of the earlier scientists, if you look at any European or Western scientists, they were prosecuted by the church. And in India, we are thinking how great they are. I mean, this is the colonial imposition on India. What a wonderful presentation you're doing. Please continue, Prashant.
Yeah. I think there are, as I said, there are lots of examples are there, but just to brief on that, let me give for today's session the last example for today's session. As I said, there are so many examples are there. See, again, since childhood, we all were taught that Nicholas Copernicus, that's the astronomer from Poland, he had established this fact that sun is the nucleus of our solar system. And everywhere, since, as I said, that since from childhood, I'm aware. I was aware about the name of Nicholas Copernicus. Copernicus was a famous name. Everyone was aware about it. That he was the person who found that. Now, this is so ridiculous that even much before, thousands of years before that, the Hindu civilization was quite aware about it. They are quite aware about the entire solar system. They are quite aware about the shape of the earth, how earth moves, and all. Everything was there. Copernicus' time was 15th century, 15th or 16th century, 1473 to 1543. That was his time. But prior to that, much prior to that, Hindu civilization, Hindu culture, Hindu knowledge base was aware about it. Let me quote another shloka from Vishnu Puran. Vishnu Puran is very old one. It was post-Vedic era. Post-Vedic era is almost, we can say, 5,000 to 6,000 years from now. I mean, before that. So, the shloka says, Naivastamana markasya no dayaha sarvada sataha udayasta manakhyam hi darshana darshanam ravehe. The meaning is, there is neither rising nor setting for the sun, for it is always there. Sun is always there, and these terms, that's of rising and setting, merely imply his presence and disappearance. So clear. This was in Vishnu Purana, book 2, chapter 8, shloka 15. It was written by sage Vyasa. Sage Vyasa has written this Vishnu Purana, and therein it was very clear. No ambiguity, as I said, no confusion. We all were quite aware about it. And even prior to this Vishnu Purana, in the Yajur Veda, there are 4 Vedas, we all are aware about it. Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Athar Veda, Sama Veda. So in Yajur Veda Taittiriya Sanhita, there was a very small shloka. Mitro dadhar prithvi mutadyam, Mitro dadhar prithvi mutadyam, mitraha krushtihi. Meaning is, the sun holds the earth and the celestial region, entire celestial region. The sun is the attracting power. So from Yajur Veda, we were aware about it, that it is the sun who was the nucleus of the entire solar system. And it was there in Yajur Veda Taittiriya Sanhita, chapter 3, Prapatak 4, Anuvakah 10, and Mantra 34. Very clearly mentioned, very clearly. The great Ptolemy, for the Western world, Ptolemy was very great. And Ptolemy in the 2nd century was saying that earth is stationary and sun is moving around earth. Ptolemy was saying, and still Ptolemy was considered the great Ptolemy. Aryabhatta, in Aryabhattiyam, he writes how earth moves around the sun. His shloka is, Anuloma gati narasthaha paschata chalam vilomaga yadvata. Achalani bhani tadavatsam Pashchim Margani Lankayam. Lanka was Sri Lanka, that Ceylon was basically a reference because it was said that the main, this thing was uh, through the Lanka. I mean, this equator was passing through the Lanka at that time, as per the Indian this thing. So in Aryabhatiyam, he was very clearly mentions that what is the Anuloma Gati Narastha Pashchitam Viloma? This means that when we travel by a ship on a river, though we are moving ahead, we feel that the stationary objects, including the trees, the houses on both sides of the banks of the river, we feel that they are going backside. They are moving backside. They are moving backwards, and we are moving ahead. Are they moving? No, they are not moving. The stationary objects on the banks of the river are not moving. They are stationary. We are moving. But the feeling is that we are not moving. We are stationary, and all the objects are moving behind us. Similarly, when we see that the sun rises and setting up, it is not the sun who is moving. Sun is stationary and earth is moving. So clear. No ambiguity. And Aryabhat wrote it around 1500 years back. And this knowledge was very common. I mean, this was not a something is very special and people are not aware. So many people were aware about it. In the 13th century, in the end of 13th century rather, there was a sage, Gyaneshwara. He had a very small span of life. 1275 he was born, and 1296 he was, I mean, he died. He wrote a very knowledgeable book called Gyaneshwari. So in Gyaneshwari, he writes, it is in the language Marathi, but he writes, अथवा नावे हनजो रिगे तो थड़िये से रुख जाता देखे वेगे तेची साचो कारे जो पाहो लागे तव रुख मणे अचल. It was in Gyaneshwari, 4th chapter, 97th shloka. Same thing what I just said, and same thing what was written in the Aryabhatiya. This means that in Aryabhatiya, knowledge was also known to sage Gyaneshwara and so many other people, and it was very simple. It was a kind of practical knowledge which was known to everyone. He writes same thing, that the way we sit in a ship and the ship is moving, we feel that we are stationary, and all the stationary objects in both the shores of the river, both the banks of the river, that moves behind us. But it is not like that. It is basically the other way around. That's what he writes. And for rising and setting up of the sun, he says, Ani udo asta cheni pramane jaise na salata surya che salane taise naishkarmitva zane karmachi asata. Again, Gyaneshwari, 4th chapter, 99th shloka. This means that he had very clearly mentioned this, that like rising and setting is not like it was actual rising and setting. It was like we feel that the sun is going. No, sun is not. Sun is there. We are moving. In 13th century is very clearly mentioned. And still, unfortunately, we talk about the Copernicus, we talk about the Ole Romer and all. John Bentley has written a very nice book on astronomy, Hindu astronomy. He studied a lot and he wrote a book, Hindu astronomy. One must really read that book. And he has mentioned that how Indians have found out so many things much before anyone could understand this. So Indians knew this universe, Indians knew this solar system much before anyone knew in the world. So why not this credit was given to Indians, to the Hindu civilization, to the Hindu knowledge base? That is the said part of it. And that is the problem, that Indians were really deprived in giving the due credit. That's what I personally feel.
Yeah, I think we have to begin asking, and we have to start doing it again. The same point is I'm repeating again, because the the Ministry of Education of India, if anyone is watching over there, they should start de-recognizing American universities who do not give credit to Indians. Chinese are doing the same thing. Chinese are de-recognizing everyone else. Like the Chinese students don't go to every university in the US. Chinese government issues them a list where they can go. So you'll find more Chinese students in Carnegie Mellon because they have a Confucius department. There's a Chinese department functioning in Carnegie Mellon. The Chinese department functioning in Yale University, Berkeley University. Now, all these universities, Chinese say, even into the extent, Chinese have created imaginary boundaries that the entire South China Sea is theirs. Because according to the history, it was China, and not the today's China, but China was the whole region. The region around Beijing was considered China, according to Mahabharata. So they are extending it to South China Sea. Now, unless you claim to it and saying, like the Indian government says everywhere, "Humne kisi pe akraman nahi kiya," we have not attacked anyone. This is the most foolish statement. You are telling everybody already that even if you attack, we'll only respond. So people are fearless. They keep on, like a small country like Malaysia will pass a judgment on India. Small country like Pakistan. Pakistan was always a Hindu country. Pulasya Rishi was in Sindh. Mahabharata was spoken there. How can we leave the entire, like, and somehow in the minds of Indians, it has been filled, it is a sovereign country. There is no sovereign definition existing. It keeps changing with time. The Narada says to remove adharma, the king should always increase his boundaries. The moment that threat is there amongst all the Pakistanis and Malaysians and Turkish, the Indian forces can come. I'm telling you, everything will change. They'll become automatically friendly. This is the way world works. Jiski lathi uski bhais. But that is the nature of the world. It's not I'm proposing that, but we have seen with the history again and again and again. Our shastras are very clear that unless you claim your history and you back it up with you don't have to attack anyone, but they know that there will be see, America is superpower for what? They know, everybody knows the American forces will come. So naturally they have to be scared of America. And that's how the America is superpower. And on that strength itself, the dollar has retained its value. Dollar has no financial backing. I mean, the amount of dollars printed versus the gold reserves is disconnected now. Since 1947, they have been printing dollars as per their will. And through their armed forces, they've made it an international currency. Now, India has to maintain the reserves of dollar. Now, where does it stay? It doesn't stay in Indian banks. It stays in New York. So India may say that we have $500 billion. China may say we have $1.4 trillion, but everything is sitting in the US, New York Bank, because they are the ones who are printing it. So it is the biggest lie. And the banking system has gone. The best time calculation meridian is the 00 meridian, which goes from Ujjain. Yeah. All the directions in the Vastu are calculated from Ujjain, that line from Ujjain. What is Purva Disha? So according to the Ujjain, anything east up to Udaigiri, which is South America, is the upper boundary of the east direction. From Ujjain, if you go west, Astachal, which is the mountains in Europe, is the western boundary. So this is how it is calculated. And thank you so much for sharing all this information today. And it's indeed pleasure to talk to you always. You bring up some new topics and very creative insight. So for all the viewers who are watching it, do comment on it and let us know. Do you have any closing comments, Prashantji?
No, I just, as I said, that there are so many such kind of, as I said, knowledge base and so many such kind of things wherein we must always come forward and say that, yes, this was, and with all solid proofs, we must say that, yes, it was discovered by our Hindu sage, Hindu scholars, which were, we were aware about it. So I think we have to put it forward and more strongly. That's what my feeling is.
Thank you so much, Prashantji, and thank you all the viewers for watching. And do let us know your feedback when this show goes live on YouTube. Namaste.
Namaste.